Okay, today we are going to look at the issue of should you buy a home or should you rent? Specifically, I am looking at the first 5 to 10 years of your working career. Now, a very, very big disclaimer. This is not a how-to guide. It is an introduction to concepts and issues. It's going to present some questions that someone has to ask themselves and examine before they can answer the question, should I buy a home or should I rent? There is no specific answer. And what's more, there is no answer depending on location, depending on specific situations, depending on local factors. There are so much that go into this question, and that's why it's an exciting and interesting question to look at. Any one factor could swing the decision into buying a home or renting a home. Some of the things that you must look at in the local area. What are the cost of homes versus the cost of renting? What is the number of retirement accounts that, number one, you have, and are you able to fill them every year? What is the current mortgage interest rate on borrowing money for a home? What are the property taxes on houses and apartments comparatively? Do you have a desire to become a small-time landlord in the future as a side income? Do you have ability to fix home issues that come up? Or will you be calling a professional every time something breaks? How much space do you truly need? And how long do you expect to be in the area and with the house? There is no right answer. And anyone who says you should always buy a home instead of renting is not an expert, and they don't know what they're talking about. You may respect them for other reasons. They may be your friends. They may be very good at whatever they do. But if anyone says you should always rent or you should always buy a home, they don't know. Don't listen to them. It is a specific answer for your specific situation. Okay, so let's go over the too long didn't watch. But if I were to be incredibly honest, if you are thinking about learning about whether you should buy a house, how to buy a house, it is the probably biggest financial decision with the largest financial ramifications you are ever going to make. So if you ever go to something and you want to learn about buying a house and you say, wow, this is too long. Well, all I can say is that's on you, and your future is going to be the exact future that you have created. Put it another way, there should never be anything too long when you're learning about house buying or where to put the vast amount of your money in retirement accounts or buying a house. So if you ever find yourself thinking, wow, this is too long and I don't want to spend time on it, the best I can say is good luck to you. Good luck to you. So let's think of it not as too long didn't watch, but let's say a summary cheat sheet of what we're going to go into. All right, so the summary of should you buy a house or should you rent? Buying a house is generally advised if you are planning to live in the house more than 5 years. If you buy a house and sell it within 5 years, there is a good chance that you will make no money on it. It might cost you money, and your money would have been doing better in other places. So living in a house for 5 years is not ideal, and you might break even, gain just a little money, or lose money. If you plan to buy a house and move out whenever, but you plan on keeping the house as a landlord property and then you rent it out, making money from it, that is a reason to buy a house, even if you're in it for less than 5 years. If you plan to keep it and use it as an income-producing property, that's a reason to buy a house and move into it. It is generally the most financially rewarding to buy a duplex and landlord the other unit. Live in one unit and landlord in the other unit. You typically make more money than just renting a place yourself. Buy a two-family, live in one side or one floor, and rent out the other. If you are a married couple sharing your finances and you can fully fund your retirement accounts, it's usually better to buy a house than to rent because of the space you need, and you are sharing your finances. So it is usually better for a family to buy a house. If you are a person that is incapable of saving your money, if money comes into your pocket and you spend it immediately, then you should probably buy a house because it will force you to save money. And if you don't make the mortgage payment, which is saving money, you will be kicked out of your house. So if you are incapable of saving money, it's best to buy a house because it will force you to save money. It's usually better to buy a house if you can do all the medium repairs yourself. If you will hire somebody to do everything around your house, that's going to cost a lot of money. You know, usually when you're looking at buying a house, it is profitable when you can do almost everything around your house. And it is not profitable to buy a house if you know you are going to make major improvements. So if you buy a house and within 5 or 6 years, the furnace, the roof, structurals, or if you want to do an addition to the house that costs $20,000 or $30,000, if a major part of the house has to be redone, you will not be making money on that house within 0 through 10 years. And if it's within the first 5 years, it might end up costing you. Any repair you do on a house, you will never get that value back selling it. So if you're looking at a house and you think you're going to do those major improvements over the next 10 years, you got to think of you might not be getting your money back. Now, renting is generally advised. So in your first years of your job, your early 20s, renting is usually advised if you can find a cheap, small, usually shared place, and then put all your saved monthly money into a retirement account and your savings. The reason you rent instead of buy a house is to get a great, cheap deal on your living, and then funnel your money, the money you save because it's so cheap per month, funnel that money into your retirement account and savings. If you can't save that money, if you're just going to spend all the money, it's better to buy a house and have the forced savings. So it is also better to rent a house if by renting you can fully fund your retirement accounts. So personally, opinion, shared by many, not all, personal opinion is that funding a retirement account fully, which depending on your job situation is either $6,000 a year or up to $25,000 a year into your retirement account, is priority number one. So if renting is so cheap that you can fully fund your retirement account, but you couldn't fund your retirement account by buying a house, especially when you're younger on your first type of house, one that you're probably going to move out of, it's opinion better to fully fund your retirement account because you're saving money renting every single year. And that's the takeaways. The short version, the quote-unquote too long didn't watch. Okay, let's get into it. I'm not saying this is the exact accounting way to think of the cost to buy a home and live there 5 years. There are many different ways you could do this, but I think this is a straightforward way. We are going to see exactly how much it costs to buy a home and live there for 5 years. Then we're going to compare it to the cost of renting for those same 5 years and see which one comes out on top. So let's get into it. The house cost that you're going to buy, let's say it's a $150,000 house. So let's go through the cost of actually buying the house. Well, there will be a $1,500 mortgage tax because you're going to take out a mortgage. And I get it, this is napkin math. Okay, you're not going to take out exactly $150,000 because you're going to have a down payment, but we're going to do this. You will see that the little bit here and there doesn't really matter in the end, okay? we're just going for, these are the things you have to consider. And when you consider it, you'll do your exact numbers. So we'll say there's $1,500 that you have to pay to the state and the county of New York, because that's where we are. And you're never going to see that money back, so it's a cost. You're going to pay a lawyer $500 to buy this house. You're never going to see that money back, so you've lost that money. The bank is going to charge you for their lawyer. You've lost that money. There's someone called an appraiser who has to go through and make sure your house is worth the $150,000 you're buying it for. They're going to charge $400. You're never going to see that money back, and you pay for it, for the privilege of owning your own home. There's this thing called title insurance. The bank is going to charge you for it, and you're going to get it yourself. That's to make sure that no one in the past who has owned the house is going to come back and say, it's still my house. Unfortunately, you can't get around title insurance, and if you don't buy it, it's a gamble. That's going to be $800. And then we've put in $300 miscellaneous recording, county fees, and such like that. It's probably a little higher, but we're going to do it. So in order to buy the house, you will pay $4,000 in money you will never get back, and it's just a cost of buying it. So keep that in your mind, because that's money that's gone. Okay, so now we're going into the major yearly costs that you have to, when you own your own home, that you have to pay for the, quote, privilege of owning your own home. Okay, you will have to pay homeowner's insurance. You can't get around that. You have to have house insurance to have a mortgage. And for a $150,000 home, let's say it's about $600 per year, which means for 5 years, it's going to cost $3,000. There's something called PMI, private mortgage insurance, and because you didn't put down $20,000, you have to have this insurance on your mortgage. And it costs $1,000 per year, meaning about $5,000 of money you're never going to get back for 5 years. Now, we could have put down more of a down payment, but then you would have less of that down payment to invest in your retirement account. So we have to choose, are we going to have more for investing on the renter side, or are we going to pay the PMI? Okay, so I've just done it this way. It doesn't make that much of a difference. You're going to pay anyway. Upkeep on a house. For commercial properties, they usually say it costs 2% of the home's value per year. I'm going to put less than 1% if it's your home, because you're going to do a lot of upkeep. You're going to do a lot of it yourself. I'm going to assume that there is absolutely no, in 5 years, roof or furnace. So it is entirely realistic that you will spend $1,000 a year upkeeping your property. And if you do it correctly with lawnmowers and with painting and repairing the wood and with simple plumbing fixes, you will spend $1,000 a year. It adds up, and that's very conservative, but it's realistic. So after 5 years, you will have spent $5,000 a year with like mouse control and everything like that. That's upkeep. You will pay, and this varies very much in where you are, but school and city taxes. It's not unreasonable. If you're able to, if your house is $150,000, that's pretty darn reasonable for a house in New York. Part of that is because the house is so reasonably priced, you're going to have to pay in taxes, okay? And so we will get $5,000 per year for school plus city taxes. Now, if you've found a place with less per year in taxes, you've probably paid more for your house cost. So it's a wash. So given this house cost, you're almost guaranteed into $5,000 a year in property school taxes, which over 5 years is $20,000. And we're going to include water because typically we're comparing this to renting, and typically the landlords don't charge you for water. So we put it in here. Water's about $365 a year for using your water, which comes out to roughly $2,000 for 5 years. And these are your absolute major expenses that you're going to have to pay to live in the house that you own and you bought per year, per 5 years. Okay, so we've jumped ahead 5 years of living. Your house cost was $150,000. You lost $4,000 buying it. You lost $35,000 living in it. And now you want to sell your house. Well, it has appreciated in value. Prices always go up, and we have to ignore, because it is a little bit tricky, some places can go up a lot and some places can actually go down. So we have to take the average for your $150,000 house, and we're going to be kind of conservative. I get that. It goes up 2% per year. It appreciates in value. Okay. So we're thinking you're going to sell your $150,000 house in 5 years for $165,600. Okay, we'll use that later. Now, when you sell it, we need that number. You will now be paying a realtor fee, unless you do it yourself, but the normal person pays a realtor. You didn't pay this fee buying it. It's a you get out of it by paying. You don't pay it when buying it. It's a very interesting thing. You will pay 6% for your selling realtor and the new homeowner's buying realtor. So 6% of 165 is about $10,000 per year. Sorry, not per year, one-time fee. And of course, you're going to go into the sale and you're going to need a lawyer, which is about $500. And there are some, once again, state taxes, recording fees, because you can't do this by yourself. The state will always take money when you are transferring real property. So we're just putting miscellaneous taxes and fees at $1,000. So it will cost you $11,500 to close, to sell the property that you thought you owned and could sell for free. Nope, it's going to cost you, and you'll never see this money back, $11,500. Okay, but remember, when you borrow money to buy a house, you actually monthly pay money, and you're paying down your debt. So when you sell after 5 years, you will actually own some of your house. So let's find out the actual cash in hand when you sell this house. Remember, you paid, the payment was $600 a month. So you sell your house for $165,600, but you don't owe 150, which you borrowed it at. You actually only owe what's left, 120.6, which means you're actually going to have $45,000 in your hand when you sell this property. Let's look through how we got that. Okay, your loan type was a mortgage, and your loan amount wasn't $150,000. It was $135,000 because you put down a down payment of 10%, 30 years of the loan, and it was at a very good rate. If you can get this rate, you are winning at life. We'll do the best case scenario, 3.4% interest. And now I want you to remember, if you can't get 3.4% interest, it is going to probably be even more better to rent, because this is the best rate you can get in the history of America. Calculate. So when we take this is your schedule. This is the day you started. And this is after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, after 4 years of payment, after 5 years of payment, you owe $120. You've been paying every single month interest and into your actual principal. So you've actually been owning a part of your house. You still owe, after 5 years, $120,000 on your original $135,000 loan. So that's where we put this in. You still owe. So at the end of the sale, you get $165,600 in cash. You then pay off your loan, $140,000, and so you have plus $145,000 in cash in your hand at your sale after 5 years. But next, we got to minus all of your closing costs and living costs to see how much it really cost you over 5 years. Okay, so in the end, what we get is, after the sale of the house, after 5 years, someone has $45,000 cash in hand. So we minus the $4,000 buying cost. We minus the $11,500 selling cost. We minus the cost, the living expenses that one does not pay in rent, the special expenses that one pays if they own a house. And in the end, we get, for 5 years, it cost $5,500 to live in that, to quote, own that house. So to own that house, at the end of 5 years, you're down $5,500. And all the while, you spent $1,263 per month to go through that whole process. Now that number is important because we're going to use it when we compare the renting. Now it's important to realize, because some people say, what happened to our $15,000 down payment? This takes into effect that the $15,000 down payment, it's baked into here. So you've lost that $15,000 down payment. It's gone. And you ended with negative $5,500 by buying that house. Okay, so now we're going to compare those same 5 years as an early 20-something in the early stages of your career. We've got the purchase of a house. It cost, at the end, it cost $1,263 per month in mortgage and running expenses. And in the end, the person who, quote, purchased their house after 5 years in this area lost $5,500. They left the deal after 5 years negative $5,500. Now, let's look at someone who started with the exact same thing but rented for 5 years. In the same area, a one-bedroom apartment, not a house, rents for $800 a month. Now, the only other non-house cost you would have is renter's insurance, which is so much less than homeowner's insurance, which is $12 a month. Now, in that $800 a month rent, that covers the taxes, that covers the water, that covers the things that a homeowner pays, so we don't include those in. It's you can live in a place renting $800 a month, and all those things, the yard work, if something breaks, it's included, okay? All those other expenses that a homeowner pays, you don't pay. You will pay renter's insurance. So it costs $812 a month for you to live and rent. Now, let's compare that to the home ownership, which we said is very important, came out to be $1,263 a month. So what does the renter have to do? Well, if they're capable, saving your money is a necessary skill. So we assume, because we're talking to the people who can be helped now, we assume you can save your money. So if you're a renter, you pay $112 in rent, but you're thinking just like a homeowner. So you're going to take that $451 that you save if you had bought a home, and you are going to invest it in your retirement accounts. So for 5 years, you could pay $1,263 a month in your own home ownership and come out negative $5,500, or you could pay $812 in rent and invest the $451 plus invest your down payment, which was $15,000. Remember that. And let me show you the calculation. We start with an initial investment of $15,000. Instead of using it as a down payment for a house, we invest it in the stock market. The monthly contribution is $451 because you have that because you're not paying the high monthly home ownership cost. For 5 years, we compound that at an estimated interest rate of 7%. Every analysis professional says that you use 7% is what the stock market grows per year. And we compound that annually and we calculate it. And at the end of 5 years, the $15,000 original investment plus the monthly contributions equal $52,000 is what you have in your pocket at the end of 5 years by renting and investing your down payment and your monthly savings. The person who bought a home and sold it and left after 5 years in this local market lost $5,500, and the person who rented gained $52,000. Why is this so different? And why is it so much in favor of renting when you're young in this area? Well, number one, it's in this area. You have to always look, what is the cost of renting the smallest, cheapest place versus the cost of buying the smallest, cheapest place? And because it's this area, it's very specific. Number one, it's the power of investing in the stock market. The power of investing money to make money is huge, and that's a national thing. That will not change in any state you are. So that's the power of nationally investing through the bad times and the good times. It is the local percentage cost of buying, owning, and selling a house. In this area, there is a huge cost to buying and selling a house. There's realtor cost, there's lawyer cost, there's that 1.5 up to 2% cost that the state takes. These are all monies you will not get back. It is the government and other people taking your money just to buy a house. The cost of owning. Property taxes are huge, and property taxes are much more on people who own their house than people who rent it. You still pay property taxes when you rent a house. It's included in your rent, but property taxes are so much less for landlords than it is for owners. So the cost of buying a house is so much more. And there's the price of luxury. When you buy the smallest house possible, you are in general buying a 3-bedroom house with a lot of space. Now see, when it's just yourself, you don't need space, so you can get the savings of renting a 1-bedroom small place, and that comes in savings. So a single person buying a house is wasting, quote unquote, so much money because of the space. Now, here's one of the tricks. You could just totally blow this up and make it worth buying a home if you rent out those rooms. If you buy a $150,000 3-bedroom house and you rent out 2 of those rooms, well, of course, it's better to buy because you're selling your space. But if you're just living in the house by yourself, you yourself are paying for those extra rooms, and it just doesn't work out. So there is a lot to think about, and you have to understand the process and the factors that go into it. Because like I said, one person renting a 3-bedroom house for 5 years will never make more money than someone willing to rent a 1-bedroom apartment and put the extra money into an account. But if you buy the house, you could easily rent out those rooms that you just bought and make out. You don't have to sell the house after 5 years. You could keep it as a rental property, and then you have made money. Okay, so you have to understand the process which we just talked about. And then you have to brainstorm how to make it work best for you and your situation. Because this wasn't about telling you what to do. This was about showing you the process on how to understand the costs involved. So then you can never cheat, but change the game and play the game in such a way that you can maximize what you want and minimize the waste.
So to wrap it up, I think the best way we can do it is for this area, disclaimer, for this area, and for a young single person, here's the list of what would make you the most money. It might not be the most comfortable. There are plenty of other factors to think about, but if we're looking at just straight finances, here's the order of how to maximize money as a young single person in the area. Okay, number 1, buy a duplex, rent out the first floor or half the building, then live in the other half and rent out the extra rooms on your half. Keep this for a few years and move on. And when you move on, keep the house and keep renting it out. While you're doing this, hustle as much as possible to make sure you are maximizing your retirement account every year, because it might cost you extra money to buy the house, so you don't want to sacrifice your retirement account. Once again, a 2-unit house, buy it, rent out half the unit, live in the other half, rent out the extra rooms with roommates, keep it, move on, keep it for rental, and make sure you always maximize your retirement account, whether it's your $6,000 a year IRA, and if you're lucky enough to have a 401k with your job, maximize that too. That is the way to gain the most money in your early 20s in your living situation, aside from living at home and saving everything. Number 2, rent a cheap place or a room, a 1-bedroom or just a room in someone else's house. Then, because you're going to be saving money, put all of your savings into a retirement account and investments. Don't spend it. You're going to be paying less than if you owned a home, so put all that extra into a retirement account. The next one down, the third worst option, getting you less money than the first 2. Buy a house, live in it for however many years, as long as you want, and when you move, keep it as a rental property. Okay. Number 4, buy a house when you're young and live in it for 10 years. But remember, don't make any major additions or repairs. If you put on a new roof in those 10 years, if you put in a new bathroom, if you put in a new addition, a new deck with a pool, you could probably put in a deck, but if it's a deck with a pool, you will not get your money back. So the 4th best thing to do is, if you have to buy a house when you're young, live in it for at least 10 years. Then you sell and leave. Getting into this is on the worst side of what not to do. Buy a house, live in it for 5 years, sell it, and leave. You're going to lose money unless you're lucky. Don't do it. And the worst thing you can do when you're young, rent. Pay your rent and blow your extra money and don't save anything. Look at what happens. From the second best thing you can do, which is rent and put your money into a retirement account, it goes to the worst thing you can do, which is rent and blow your money. So once again, we get to the idea of those who save are doing exactly what they have to do for financial security. And if you don't save, your plans go from the second best thing you can do to the worst thing you can do, which is rent and don't save at all. Then that is truly when you are throwing your money away. Hope this helped. See ya.